In a small sandwich shop, a homeless veteran was kicked out by the manager for not having enough money, but a black employee secretly gave him food and even used his own money to buy milk for others. A passerby recorded the act, and when the clip went viral, the black employee lost his job until the real owner showed up and changed his life forever. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. Marcus Williams had calloused hands that told a story. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., those hands would tie the same faded apron around his waist at Tony's sandwich shop on 5th Street. The downtown location meant good foot traffic, but it also meant dealing with everything the city had to offer, including the homeless population that Mr. Thompson, the store manager, absolutely despised. "Marcus, you see any of those bums hanging around the front again, you call me immediately." Thompson would bark every morning, his pale face already flushed red with irritation. "This is a respectable establishment, not some charity kitchen." Marcus would just nod. At 28, he'd learned to pick his battles. This job paid $15 an hour, not much, but enough to help his younger sister Keisha through her sophomore year at community college. She was studying nursing, and Marcus would be damned if he let her dreams die because of his pride. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, a black man in America, being lectured about respectability by a guy who probably made more in a week than Marcus saw in a month. But Marcus needed this job. Keisha needed this job. That's when Samuel first appeared. The old man looked like he'd been through hell, weathered skin, clothes that had seen better decades, and eyes that held the kind of pain you only get from serving your country and coming home to nothing. His hands shook slightly as he approached the counter, and Marcus could see him counting crumpled dollar bills over and over. "Excuse me, son." Samuel's voice was hoarse but polite. "Could I get one of them turkey sandwiches? I got $6 here." Marcus glanced at the menu. Turkey sandwich was $5.99. "Sure thing, sir, coming right up." But before Marcus could even reach for the bread, Thompson appeared like a vulture sensing carrion. "Whoa, whoa, whoa." Thompson stepped between Marcus and Samuel, his voice dripping with disgust. "I'm sorry, but we don't serve your type here. This is a clean establishment." Samuel's eyes widened. "Sir, I have money. $6, just like the sign says." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He wanted to speak up, wanted to tell Thompson where he could shove his clean establishment, but the memory of Keisha's tuition bill kept his mouth shut. Thompson's smile was cruel. "Well, actually, we just raised our prices. Turkey sandwich is now $10. Supply chain issues, you understand." The lie hung in the air like smoke. Marcus watched Samuel's face crumple, watched him look down at his $6 like they'd betrayed him. "But the sign says." "The sign's wrong, $10 or get out. You're making my other customers uncomfortable." Marcus looked around. There were no other customers. Samuel's shoulders sagged. "I've been saving these $6 for 3 days, son. Haven't eaten since yesterday morning." "Not my problem." Security. There was no security, but the threat was enough. Samuel shuffled toward the door, his head down, dignity stripped away piece by piece. As he reached the threshold, he turned back one more time. "I fought in Vietnam, you know. Purple Heart recipient. I just wanted a sandwich." The door chimed as it closed behind him. Thompson brushed his hands together like he'd just taken out the trash. "Remember this, Marcus. We start serving the homeless, and before you know it, this place becomes a soup kitchen. Bad for business, bad for our reputation." Marcus stared at the door where Samuel had disappeared. Something twisted in his gut, part anger, part shame, part something he couldn't quite name yet. "You got it, Mr. Thompson." But as Marcus watched through the window, seeing Samuel digging through the dumpster behind the Chinese restaurant across the street, he knew something had changed. The seed of an idea, small but determined, had planted itself in his mind. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Samuel's hands shaking as he counted those $6. He saw the Purple Heart recipient, reduced to begging for scraps, and he made a decision that would change everything. The next evening, Thompson made sure to drive the point home. "Marcus, I want to be crystal clear about our policy regarding the homeless population." Thompson's voice carried that particular tone white managers used when they wanted to sound official. "Under no circumstances are you to serve them. I don't care if they have money, I don't care if they're polite. They bring down property values, they scare away real customers, and frankly they smell." Marcus gripped the cleaning rag tighter. "What if they have exact change? Did I stutter? No. Homeless, period. If I find out you've been serving them, you're fired. No warning, no discussion. Gone. And good luck explaining that to your next employer. The threat landed exactly where Thompson intended. Marcus had been fired from his last job at a warehouse for insubordination, which really meant he'd asked for the overtime pay he was legally owed. In this job market, especially for someone with his background, opportunities were scarce. Understood, sir. Thompson smiled that same cruel smile. Good. Now when you close tonight, make sure all the leftover sandwiches go in the dumpster. Can't have day-old products sitting around. As Thompson left, jingling his keys like some sort of victory march, Marcus felt the weight of the decision he'd been wrestling with all day. He looked at the sandwich counter, at the display case that would be full of perfectly good food destined for the trash. The hours crawled by. Marcus made sandwiches, ran the register, cleaned tables, and all the while, his mind was racing. When 9 o'clock finally rolled around and he flipped the sign to closed, his heart was pounding. That's when he saw Samuel. The old man was hunched over the dumpster behind the shop, his thin frame barely visible in the dim streetlight. Marcus watched through the back window as Samuel pulled out what looked like half a pizza, examining it for mold before taking a tentative bite. Damn it, Marcus whispered. He looked at the counter. 12 sandwiches left over. Turkey, ham, Italian combo. Thompson's orders were clear. Throw them away. Marcus looked back at Samuel, then at the sandwiches, then at Samuel again. Screw it. He grabbed all 12 sandwiches and headed for the back door. Sir, Samuel. The old man spun around, dropping the pizza slice like he'd been caught stealing. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. It's okay. Marcus held up the bag of sandwiches. These were gonna go in the trash anyway. You want them? Samuel's eyes widened like he was seeing a miracle. Are you sure? Won't you get in trouble? Marcus thought about Thompson's threat, about Keisha's tuition, about his own precarious position in a world that didn't seem designed for people who looked like him. Then he looked at Samuel, really looked at him. This wasn't just some bum. This was someone's son, someone's father maybe. A veteran who'd bled for the same flag that Marcus pledged allegiance to every morning in elementary school. They're just gonna spoil anyway. Samuel reached for the bag with trembling hands. There's so many. Could I maybe share with some friends? There's 3 other folks who stay near the underpass, and there's this woman with 2 little kids who, take them all. Marcus felt something loosening in his chest, like a knot he didn't know he'd been carrying. Actually, hold on. He went back inside and grabbed his wallet. $8, his coffee money for tomorrow morning. He'd been buying the same large coffee from the place next door every morning for 6 months. It was his one daily indulgence. But when he looked out at Samuel, at the way the old man was carefully arranging the sandwiches like they were precious artifacts, Marcus knew what he had to do. I'll be right back. The convenience store on the corner was still open. Marcus bought 3 cartons of milk and 4 bottles of water. The total came to $7.50. As he handed over his last bills, the cashier, a young guy around Marcus's age, gave him a curious look. Late night grocery run. Something like that. When Marcus got back outside, Samuel wasn't alone. An elderly woman and 2 small children, couldn't have been more than 6 and 8, were standing nearby. The kids were staring at the sandwiches like they were looking at Christmas morning. This is Miss Betty, Samuel said, gesturing to the woman. And these are her grandkids, Jamal and Tia. Their mama's working the night shift at the hospital. Marcus handed out the milk and water. The little boy, Jamal, took his carton with both hands. Is this whole milk? He asked, his eyes wide. Sure is, buddy. I ain't had whole milk in forever. Betty wiped her eyes. Son, you don't know what this means. These babies ain't eaten since breakfast. Samuel was shaking his head in disbelief. Nobody's been this kind to us in hell. I can't remember how long. Most people, they look right through us, like we're ghosts. Marcus felt a lump forming in his throat. You're not ghosts, you're people. You deserve to eat. But won't your boss let me worry about that? Marcus surprised himself with how certain he sounded. Listen, I work here 5 days a week. There's always leftover sandwiches, if you want to come by around closing time. Samuel's eyes filled with tears. You'd do that? Every day? Marcus looked at the little girl, Tia, who was carefully sipping her milk like she was trying to make it last forever. He thought about his own sister at that age, how their mother used to water down their cereal milk to make it stretch. Yeah, every day. As he walked home that night, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years: purpose. Sure, he was probably walking into a world of trouble with Thompson. Sure, he might lose his job, but for the first time since he'd started working at Tony's, he felt like himself again. He just didn't know that someone had been filming from across the street. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus's nightly routine became the highlight of his day. Samuel would arrive first, usually around 8:45, followed by Betty and the kids, then a rotating cast of characters that Marcus came to know by name. There was James, a veteran from Iraq, who'd lost his leg to an IED and his apartment to medical debt. Maria, who worked 2 minimum wage jobs but still couldn't afford rent in the city and slept in her car with her teenage daughter. Tommy, barely 19, who'd aged out of foster care with nothing but a backpack and a broken heart. Each person carried a story that broke Marcus's heart and rebuilt it at the same time. These weren't the lazy, drug-addicted stereotypes that Thompson railed against. These were people who'd been chewed up by circumstances beyond their control, spit out by a system that saw them as expendable. Marcus started bringing more than just sandwiches. He'd grab crackers that were about to expire, fruit that had a few brown spots, sodas that were dented and unsellable. Thompson never noticed. The man was too busy congratulating himself on his efficient loss prevention to pay attention to what was actually being lost. "You know what your problem is, Marcus," Thompson said one afternoon as they restocked the chips. "You're too soft-hearted. In business, you gotta be tough. Darwinian, survival of the fittest." Marcus arranged the bags of Doritos in perfect rows. "Yes, sir. Take those homeless people, for example. They're homeless because they made bad choices. Drugs, alcohol, laziness. You start enabling them, and they'll never learn to help themselves." Marcus thought about James, who'd showed him his Purple Heart medal, and talked about the nightmares that kept him awake. About Maria's daughter Sophia, who was getting straight A's in high school despite living in a Toyota Camry. About Tommy, who was teaching himself to code on a broken laptop he'd found in a dumpster. "I guess," Marcus said. But that night, when he handed Tommy a turkey sandwich and saw the kid's face light up like he'd won the lottery, Marcus knew Thompson was wrong about everything. "Mr. Marcus," Tommy said, taking a huge bite, "I got some good news. That coding boot camp I applied for. They offered me a scholarship." "Tommy, that's amazing. I start next month. Free housing, free meals, job placement after graduation." Tommy's eyes were bright with possibility. "I ain't gonna be homeless much longer." Samuel clapped the kid on the back. "See, I told you that brain of yours would pay off. None of this would have happened without you, Mr. Marcus. You keeping us fed, keeping our strength up, it gave me the energy to keep applying, keep studying." Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest. "You did the work, man. I just provided some sandwiches." "No," Betty chimed in, bouncing little Tia on her lap. "You provided hope. You reminded us we're human beings worth caring about." 3 days later, Marcus learned just how dangerous hope could be. He was walking home from work around 10:30 p.m., taking his usual route through downtown, when 3 men stepped out of an alley. Marcus recognized the look immediately: predators who'd sized him up as prey. "Yo man, let me hold $20, the leader said, but his hand was already inside his jacket. "For bus fare." Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd been robbed before, knew the drill. Give them what they want, hope they don't decide to hurt you anyway. "I don't have 20, man. Just a couple bucks. Check your pockets, all of them." Marcus reached for his wallet, hands shaking. He had maybe $12 and his debit card. Not worth dying over. That's when he heard Samuel's voice. "Hey, leave him alone." Marcus turned to see Samuel emerging from the shadows, followed by James limping on his prosthetic leg, Maria carrying what looked like a tire iron, and Tommy with his broken laptop bag slung over his shoulder like a weapon. "This here's family," Samuel said, his voice steady despite his slight frame, "and we protect family." The would-be robbers looked around, suddenly outnumbered. The leader's hand stayed inside his jacket, but his confidence had evaporated. "This ain't over," he muttered, but they were already backing away. As they disappeared into the night, Marcus stood there in shock. These people, these supposedly worthless members of society, had risked their safety to protect him. "You okay, son?" Samuel asked, putting a weathered hand on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. "That's what family does," Betty said, appearing with Tia and Jamal in tow. "We look out for each other." Walking home that night, surrounded by his unlikely guardian angels, Marcus understood something profound. His small act of kindness hadn't just fed hungry people, it had created a community, a family forged not by blood but by compassion. He had no way of knowing that tomorrow everything would change. It started with a notification on Marcus's phone during his lunch break. "Yo Marcus, you seen this?" His coworker Danny held up his phone. Some videos blowing up on TikTok about a sandwich angels downtown. Marcus's blood turned to ice. "What video?" Danny hit play and there it was, grainy footage shot from across the street showing Marcus handing out sandwiches to Samuel, Betty and the kids 3 nights ago. The person filming had captured the moment when little Jamal hugged Marcus's legs and when Betty wiped away tears of gratitude. The caption read, "This man feeds homeless people every night with leftover food from his job. Faith in humanity restored. #sandwich angel #kindness matters. Damn bro," Danny said grinning, "you're like a local celebrity. This thing's got 500,000 views already." Marcus felt like he was going to throw up. "I gotta get back to work." But the video kept growing. By 2 p.m. it had hit 1 million views. By 4 p.m. local news stations were calling the shop. By 6 p.m. customers were coming in specifically to meet the sandwich angel. "Excuse me, are you Marcus?" A middle-aged woman approached the counter with her phone out. "I saw your video online. What you're doing is beautiful." "I'm just making sandwiches, ma'am." "No honey, you're showing the world what compassion looks like. My grandmother always said you can judge a society by how it treats its most vulnerable members." More customers echoed the sentiment throughout the evening. Marcus tried to deflect, tried to focus on his job, but the praise kept coming. And with each compliment, he could see Thompson's face getting redder. At 8:45 p.m. when Thompson was supposed to be gone for the day, he burst through the front door with his phone in hand. "Marcus," the venom in Thompson's voice made every customer in the shop turn around. Marcus felt his world beginning to crumble. "Back room, now." Marcus followed Thompson, his legs feeling like jelly. Thompson slammed the door and shoved his phone in Marcus's face. "Explain this. Right now." The video was playing on repeat. Marcus watched himself handing out sandwiches, saw the joy on Tia's face as she drank her milk, heard Samuel's voice thanking him for treating them like human beings. "Sir, I can explain. Explain. Explain." Thompson's face was purple with rage. "You directly violated my orders. You've been feeding those parasites with our food, haven't you? They were going to be thrown away. I don't care if they were made of gold. I specifically told you not to serve homeless people and you've been running a damn soup kitchen behind my back." Marcus's hands were shaking. "They're not parasites, Mr. Thompson. They're people, veterans, families. They're nothing. They're drain on society, and now because of your bleeding heart liberal bullshit, our store is associated with them. Do you know what this means for our reputation?" "People seem to like it," Marcus said quietly. "The customers today, the customers don't matter. What matters is corporate policy, health department regulations and my authority." Thompson was practically foaming at the mouth. "You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out." "There's no security here." "Then escort yourself. And don't think you're getting your last paycheck. The cost of all those sandwiches you stole is coming out of your final pay. You'll be lucky if I don't have you arrested for theft." Marcus felt the room spinning. His job, Keisha's tuition, their rent, everything was falling apart. "Please, Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry, I won't do it again." "Damn right you won't, because you're fired." The door opened behind them and Marcus turned to see a middle-aged Latino man in an expensive suit. Thompson's demeanor changed instantly. "Mr. Rodriguez." "Sir, I didn't know you were coming by today." Tony Rodriguez, the actual owner of the franchise, stepped into the room with a confused expression. "I saw the news vans outside. Something about a viral video." Thompson's smile was oily and desperate. "Yes, sir. A little situation with one of our employees. But don't worry, I've handled it. Terminated him immediately for policy violations." Rodriguez pulled out his phone. "Is this the video?" He hit play and once again Marcus watched his own acts of kindness play out on the screen. "Exactly," Thompson said, nodding vigorously. "Completely unauthorized. Bad for the brand. I fired him on the spot to protect our reputation." Rodriguez watched the entire video, his expression unreadable. When it finished, he looked up at Thompson. "You fired him for this. Company policy clearly states this is the most beautiful thing I've seen all year," Rodriguez said quietly. "My God, look at that little girl's face when she gets the milk. Look at the way that veteran shakes his hand." Thompson's confident smile faltered. "Sir, I don't understand. My phone's been ringing all day. News stations, radio shows, the mayor's office. Everyone wants to know about our sandwich angel. Do you know what this kind of positive publicity is worth? But the homeless people will what, Frank? Be fed, be treated with dignity." Rodriguez's voice was getting colder. "My family came to this country with nothing. We slept in a car for 2 months when I was 8 years old. If someone like Marcus had shown us kindness, maybe we wouldn't have gone to bed hungry so many nights." Thompson was sweating now. "I was just following corporate guidelines. Corporate guidelines don't override human decency." Rodriguez turned to Marcus. "Son, I'm sorry you had to deal with this. Your job is secure. In fact, we need to talk about making this sandwich program official." "Sir, with all due respect," Thompson interrupted, "these people will turn this place into a homeless encampment. They'll drive away real customers." "Real customers?" Rodriguez's voice was deadly quiet. "What makes them less real than anyone else?" "Well, they don't have money. The veteran in that video served our country. The woman is working 2 jobs. The young man is starting a coding boot camp." Rodriguez had clearly done his research. But even if they weren't, even if they were just hungry human beings, they'd still deserve basic respect. Thompson was digging his own grave and couldn't stop. "Look, I'm just trying to protect the business from those people. They're dirty, they're dangerous. Stop talking, sir." "Frank, in 30 seconds you've shown me more about your character than 3 years of employment reviews. You're fired." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Thompson's face went through a spectrum of emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, and finally, desperate pleading. "Mr. Rodriguez, please, I've been with the company for 15 years. I have a mortgage, kids in college. Maybe you should have thought about that before calling human beings parasites and those people." Rodriguez's voice was calm but final. "Clear out your office. You can't do this. I was protecting the business. You were protecting nothing but your own prejudices." "Marcus, would you be interested in managing this location?" Marcus felt like he was in a dream. "Sir, I don't have management experience. You have something more important. You have compassion. And apparently you're already running a program that's brought more positive attention to this business than we've had in years." Thompson was still standing there, mouth agape. "This is insane. You're promoting him. He's been stealing from you. He's been feeding hungry people with food that was going to be thrown away. If that's theft, then I want more thieves working for me." As Thompson gathered his things and stormed out, muttering threats about lawyers and wrongful termination, Rodriguez turned to Marcus with a smile. "So Mr. Williams, ready to change some lives?" 6 months later, Marcus stood behind the counter of what was now officially called Second Chance Sandwiches. The name change had been his idea. Rodriguez had loved it immediately. The daily bread program had become the cornerstone of their business model. Every evening at 8 p.m., instead of throwing away leftover food, they held an informal dinner service for anyone who needed it. No questions asked, no judgment passed. The impact had been beyond anything Marcus could have imagined. Tommy had graduated from his coding boot camp and landed a job at a tech startup. He still stopped by twice a week, not for food anymore, but to volunteer and mentor other young people experiencing homelessness. Maria had saved enough money to put a deposit down on a small apartment. Her daughter Sophia was thriving in school and had been accepted to 3 colleges with full scholarships. James had connected with veteran services through another program regular and was now living in transitional housing while working part-time at a non-profit helping other veterans navigate the system. Even Betty had found stable housing through a senior assistance program, though she still brought Tia and Jamal by every Friday for what had become their weekly tradition. And Samuel had become Marcus's assistant manager. "You know," Samuel said one afternoon as they prepped for the evening service, "when I walked in here with those $6 I was ready to give up. I figured the world had decided I didn't matter anymore." "You've always mattered," Marcus replied, arranging sandwiches in warming trays. The world just forgot how to see it. That boy Tommy's bringing 3 new folks tonight. Kids who aged out of the foster system, like he. Marcus nodded. The ripple effects kept spreading. People who'd been helped were now helping others, creating an ever-widening circle of support and community. The bell above the door chimed, and Rodriguez walked in with a woman Marcus didn't recognize, professional-looking, carrying a camera. "Marcus, I'd like you to meet Jennifer Walsh from Good Morning America. They want to do a feature on the program." Marcus wiped his hands on his apron. "National TV, you've started something here that cities all over the country want to replicate," Jennifer said, shaking his hand. "The second chance model is being implemented in over 200 locations nationwide." "It's not really a model," Marcus said. "It's just treating people like people. Sometimes the simplest ideas are the most revolutionary." As they set up for the interview, Marcus caught sight of someone standing across the street. It was Thompson, looking older, smaller somehow. He was staring at the shop with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. After the interview crew left, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He grabbed a turkey sandwich and walked across the street. "Mr. Thompson," the older man startled, then straightened his shoulders defensively. "Marcus, how've you been?" Thompson's laugh was bitter. "How do you think? Word gets around in this industry. Nobody wants to hire the guy who got fired for being insensitive to the homeless community." Marcus held out the sandwich. "You hungry?" Thompson stared at the offered food like it might explode. "Why would you?" "Because everyone deserves a second chance." For a moment, Thompson's carefully maintained armor cracked. His eyes filled with tears. He quickly blinked away. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "About everything, about them, about you. I let fear and ignorance turn me into something ugly. Fear makes us all ugly sometimes." Thompson took the sandwich with trembling hands. "I don't deserve this kindness. Not after how I treated you, how I talked about those people." "Nobody deserves kindness," Marcus said. "That's what makes it kindness instead of payment." As Marcus walked back to the shop, he saw Samuel watching from the window. The old veteran gave him a thumbs up, and a smile that could have powered the whole city block. That evening, as the Daily Bread program served dinner to 47 people, regulars and newcomers, families and individuals, veterans and students and workers and dreamers, Marcus reflected on how much had changed. A year ago, he'd been just another underpaid worker in a job that barely covered his bills, watching injustice happen and feeling powerless to stop it. Tonight, he was surrounded by a community he'd helped create, watching lives transform through the simple act of acknowledging each other's humanity. The local news crew was there to film a follow-up story. The reporter, a young woman named Lisa, approached Marcus as the evening wound down. "Marcus, what would you say to people watching who want to make a difference but don't know how to start?" Marcus looked around at the faces surrounding him. Samuel teaching a young man how to fill out a job application, Betty reading to a group of children, Tommy showing someone his laptop and explaining coding basics. "Start small," he said. "Start with one person, one moment, one sandwich. You don't have to change the world all at once. Just change it for one person, and let them change it for someone else." "Any final thoughts?" Marcus smiled, thinking about the journey that had brought him here. The fear, the risk, the moment he decided that doing right was more important than staying safe. "We're all just walking each other home," he said. "The question isn't whether you have enough to share. The question is whether you have enough courage to care." As the camera stopped rolling, and the crowd began to disperse, Samuel approached Marcus with something in his hand. "What's that?" "Letter came for you today. Official looking." Marcus opened the envelope and read the contents twice before the words sank in. It was from the mayor's office, informing him that he'd been selected as the city's humanitarian of the year. "Well, I'll be damned," Samuel chuckled. "From fired employee to city award winner in 6 months. That might be some kind of record." Marcus folded the letter and put it in his pocket. Awards were nice, but they weren't why he did this. He did it for moments like tonight, when he'd watched a young mother cry with relief as she filled a bag with sandwiches for her children. He did it for the teenager who told him this was the first hot meal he'd had in 3 days. He did it because in a world that often seemed designed to make people feel invisible, everyone deserved to be seen. You know what the best part is? Marcus said as they locked up the shop. What's that? Tomorrow, we get to do it all over again. As they walked into the night, their shadows stretching long under the streetlights, Marcus thought about the chain reaction that had started with 6 crumpled dollar bills and an old man's dignity. One moment of choosing compassion over compliance had rippled outward, touching hundreds of lives, creating a community where none had existed before. Sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is simply treat someone like a human being. Sometimes that's enough to change the world.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.